Holy crap, everybody. Did you see this week? We had the biggest week in cannabis legalization news since we started doing this podcast over 5 years ago. In sequential days, we got the new farm bill. And then the day before that, we had the notice of proposed rulemaking, which is very light on rules and very heavy on theory. We're going to go over pretty much those two things in excruciating detail about what it may mean, what's going to change, how long this is going to take, other questions. I've highlighted both of them. The hemp bill was only 12 pages, but it was mostly what I would call in software, if I was still coding years ago, pointers, but it's amending stuff, and there's a lot of pointers in it. The other one is thin, and there is a recitative, or just like a repetition of a particular term from the OLC. That's the Office of Legal Counsel. We're going to break it all down for you and go over this in painful detail about the rescheduling, the notice of proposed rulemaking, which is not yet the rule. You get to participate, especially our subscribers and our members. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is going to be a really good one. If you haven't tuned in before, you're in for a treat, because we're going to go over the notice of proposed rulemaking for moving it to Schedule 3, and then also the House's version of what they want to do with hemp. Spoiler alert, there's a lot more definitions of hemp. Okay, let's get to the trending stories of the week.
Let me in.
Dude, what was that past week? I mean, like Thursday and then Friday. It was hard to get work done.
Well, I mean, I know you're super excited, but for all the people in the back room that were bitching and moaning about Biden and like, the president should just fucking. Could you let the crowd in the back and the people in the back know again that the president can't legalize it through a sweep of a pen, because
that is overreach. This is as far as the executive branch can go, and the executive branch could be different before this this method that we are in the middle of is over. It's entirely conceivable that the final rule for this may not be promulgated, which is just a fancy verb for making up rules, until after the election and after January 20th of next year, which is when Biden is either starting his second term or Trump is starting his second term. Whether or not either of these and how either of these are going to play out remains to be seen. But I'd vote for Biden for this very reason. His party seems to be way more cannabis friendly than Donald Trump's party. I don't care what it tells you. But
not just that,
it's the votes.
But like I said, if there was an executive order, right? Like just a sweeping, like, it's legalized now, right?
This was an executive order. This is what the executive order looks like. That's it.
Well, it wasn't an order to, like, it's legal, right? Because if that was like, say that the sentence, the next administration can override it, right? Even though, like,
Correct.
It was like, executive orders are things that can be revoked by the next administration.
They are using their authority under the Controlled Substances Act and their authority under the executive branch of that to reschedule certain substances that we love and call cannabis here on this program. And they are doing it pursuant to the terms of the law and the powers vested in them by those terms of the law. So they do not need new congressional action for that. However, when you say like a stroke of a pen, executive action, we are in that process. And executive action doesn't mean overnight. It means that you have issued that, you directed the HHS. That was last summer on August 29th.
Okay.
Then the DEA did its work to talk to the Office of Legal Counsel, probably also dragged its heels quite a bit. And then the Office of Legal Counsel provided if we go over what was published, it's like 92 pages. We're going to be doing that soon. It's still before you can even leave a public comment. You can't leave a public comment until the 21st. So like we are early. And so we aren't going to do the public comment that we'll do and show you how to file it at home until next week, because it's not going to do you any good now.
And again, it's the process. It's very convoluted. It's like us winning a license, right? Like a year ago, we applied on a fluke, won the license. Now we're real talks, because finally, after a year, we have a tangible thing that says, okay, you're allowed to have business. And Now we're building the assets to create the actual brick and mortar. It's not overnight. We hope to have something done within a year, right? Like that's idealistic. I still gotta go to work, and
I can't impress upon this enough. If you ever speak like that to any group of my entrepreneurs, I will never invite you back. And so, like, you are always working. That's how it is being an entrepreneur.
Well, yeah,
you can't quit your job. It's Grateful Dead did a song about it. It's like, keep your day job until your night job pays. You're just changing jobs. That's really it. You now get paid to do what you wake up for in the world. And so, like, you get to wake up and you get to work really hard. You have to work harder than you're working now, because you are going from an employee to an owner. There's a difference. And
you're right.
That method is important. Yeah.
No, you're totally right. I mean, like, and work to me is very subjugated, where this is a scary part because I do like my day job. I do like the thing I do.
You don't have to leave it. You can just manage and own a business and learn, and then eventually you'll be like, this job, and then that's fine. It's called compounding returns, and so more and more cash flows are better.
But
more cash, not less.
But for like the average consumer, like this new process, this new dropping, rescheduling, it's not gonna make a difference in most people, right?
No, this is like thunderous, and it's confusing, and the stuff that's inside of it is buried inside of it. And so we really need to start digging in, and we're going to start digging in with a slip opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel that was published. Well, we just finally got it, but it was April 11th, 24. And they have this sentence that appears in the notice of proposed rulemaking often, and then also in this legal opinion letter that Biden's Office of Legal Counsel, that would change, by the way. And so if someone else is elected, this legal opinion is done by the Justice Department of Joe Biden, not of Donald Trump. And so it can be undone, because we are in now. The rule changing has the power of law. And so we can change the law, the Controlled Substances Act, through this. But it is subject to the administration that is in power. Now, like it's gotten further than it ever has. Medical cannabis is 88% support. I don't think it's going to be undone. But the nuances can still be very different depending on what happens.
Well, again, we're only in the third inning, and this is like a hat trick that we're waiting for it to happen, hoping, for the final touchdown. Notice I try to throw like 5 sports things in this analogy, because we're not fucking done. It's not a game over, baby. This is there's so much more, but this will help perpetuate the descheduling that we all hope and dream of, the parity of alcohol and all the other things.
No, it's different, and it's going to get painful. And so, like, this is the thing that keeps coming up. If you read it, the DEA may satisfy the international obligations by putting marijuana in Schedule 3 while imposing additional restriction pursuant to the CSA's regulatory authority. And so here is the whole 92-page thing that's been published. We're going to skip over the public comments because they still are closed. Tune in next week for our public comment. There's some interesting things about it. And there it is. This one is about how much deference facts are afforded by what HHS and DEA have found. Some of the really interesting things in this is they created a new test that new test never existed before, by the way. And now it does, and it's how they can test for the rescheduling purposes of a substance, not for FDA approval, even the FDA was involved. There's some very nice diplomatic language saying that despite this and us moving it to Schedule 3, there is no FDA-approved cannabis drug that's out there.
Right.
But the science, they get a lot of deference for the science that they have.
I mean, this is unfortunate, and again, it's not perfect. We're not done. There's still a lot to do as far as for the end game for what is legalization. Where homegrown and everybody doesn't worry about where it becomes like
where you would want to sell your dispensary because everybody's just growing it in their backyard and the dispensary is worthless. Yes, I get it.
A produce. You know what I mean? Essentially, this is what this is. It really is. But to get there, we still have to like first get it off the number one heroin category, and this also perpetuates the conversation, right? Because now most people don't fucking think about like why is weed illegal? You know, most people don't think about like what's its schedule, you know, or even understand what the you know. So this will help perpetuate. I think people realizing, hey, why did they change it from 1 to 3? What does that mean? You know,
They haven't changed it yet. We are in the process of it being changed. And so first they had to recognize whether or not it had a currently accepted medical use. And it turns out, yes, it does. It does have a currently accepted medical use. Okay, and so that is CAMU, CAMU, and so like Camu can do, and Sartre is Smartra, but CAMU in this instance is currently accepted medical use, and that means that it actually has to get out of Schedule 1 because Schedule 1 says there ain't none. And most of what they do in this is they provide the factual background to substantiate them moving cannabis or marijuana, as they call it. Marijuana is they have the definition of hemp, and then they're changing the definition of hemp to make like at least 3 new definitions of hemp, which is cool. And section 130901, tune in for the second half after 420 somewhere, and whenever we finish this, we're going to talk about the new farm bill next. But they talk about delta 9 THC and the 0.3, so that hasn't changed. But then here it is. It's October 6th. So these are the factual basis, initiating the process to review. So first, the executive action had to be pursuant to the statute that says HHS can now administratively review how it is scheduled. And then that required FDA to get in. And meanwhile, you know who did not make any determination regarding the appropriate schedule of marijuana? The DEA.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. I am shocked that somebody whose job depends on them not understanding it would do something that shows that they don't understand what they're doing.
But you know the hoopla, or because in the chat people are upset about the FDA, or they know that like a lot of people believe that Trump will change the right or RFJK who's not even should be
he would have to do the same effing thing that's going on right now. He would have to do the same stuff that's going on. But there's an interesting.
He would stop it most likely.
If you would stop it, that would be extremely unpopular.
Well, I'm saying though, but the administration can stop any other person's progress, right? Like this doesn't have to be a nil. This is not done.
He could make his own executive order to authorize and then he's telling the people in his administration, his executive branch, his one of 3 branches of government to do X. And so they're doing X pursuant to what Congress said they could do. And so like he could say that was wrong. It needs to be Schedule 2. It needs to be Schedule 1. He can't say it needs to be off schedule. That takes an act of Congress.
See, and I think people just keep missing the point where how important this is. I know you're very excited because this is, and again, we're not going to be at the point where, like you said, it's going to be very hard to get to the point where it's a passe thing, because now we're going to allow the studies where people can do studies that are going to be, but it's also creating the infrastructure, right? All the purchasing codes and just the business shit that most people don't think about.
Get into that though. That's what we're talking about. So like DEA believes, and so this is important stuff. And so like, how do we? It'd be nice if we had. That one's not the best. That also fucks up when we do. Okay, let's do that one. And so the DEA believes that additional information arising from this rulemaking will further inform the findings regarding the appropriate schedule for weed. And of course, they call weed marijuana there, and that is echoing this Office of the Legal Counsel's opinion that through this rulemaking, we can make up, pursuant to the basis in there, and they cite it. And so like a lot of this is finding the facts. And then they talk about the different nomenclature for the NDA and then the FDA. And so there's also an IND. They must have previously defined it here, but then the FDA's Food and Drug Administration. and they get to approve drugs. And it would be the only Schedule III drug that I know of that is illegal to dispense. Somebody on LinkedIn gave me another one, and I'm like, okay, cool, but I didn't look into it. So there may be another one, but it would be an aberration, because why would something be Schedule III if it's still illegal? Because there's no FDA approved drugs, because no new drug application or innovative new drug, I think is what IND stands for, has ever been approved for weed.
Well, and I think when we look at legalization, you have to look at it like a chicken and egg type thing too, right? Because most people say like we can all agree that the scheduling is not fair. Just overall, like how the hell do you, without any real fact-based science, put cannabis with heroin in number one? And even though heroin is still used as medicine in some form, opioids.
Yeah, but then it was never. It has not for many decades been used as something as heroin, as opposed to like morphine, something like that, where they would make it into a safer version of it, or more. The important part is there's no FDA approved weed drug. And so like here is, that's right, because I need to like import it then. I'm trying to do something so I don't show you the show notes. And so the Food and Drug Administration has their own webpage about this, about how there's been, since the 1970s, over 800 investigational new drug applications, or INDs, for cannabis. Not one has ever been approved. Not one.
Well, when you say not one, I mean, how are they excluding Marinol because they're just extracts?
No, I'm talking about the method to approve prescription drugs in the United States. And so like you need to submit a new drug application, or the IND, which is its exception, which is a pre-investigational new drug application. And so there's only so many ways that this Schedule III substance will be able to be legally dispensed at a dispensary, because there are provisions in the law, and I will pull those up now under because they discuss them at relevant length in the rule. And so if I hit that, there it is. It only appears once. This is actually toward the end of it, where this is like the whole Megillah right here. And so marijuana is subject to the FTCA, which most of the stuff like this package of chewing gum, okay, you can't see me, is also subject to the FTCA. And then they would need to have FDA approval to be lawfully introduced or delivered into interstate commerce, unless an NDA or an IND is in effect for that drug. And then they do a string citation, and a string citation is basically a citation to more than one authority. And so it's 355A, 355I, and then that one is the analog to A, and then there's 331D, which is the general prohibition on it. And so this is a poser. This is what you would call, that's a pickle. That one is really hard to understand and define.
And that's what I was trying to go with the chicken and egg thing right there, because in that segment where it says C21 USC, I mean, all of this is we as far as scheduling goes, or CSA rather, the Controlled Substance Act, right? Like if we got that taken away, nullified, that would take away scheduling, wouldn't it? Or that would give
no, that would create like pandemonium, chaos, and like absolutely no drug authority. So like, I don't even know if you'd be able to go to Walgreens to pick up your script. There is a comprehensive federal regulatory scheme for the drugs that we take in this United States. And then there's illicit channels, which the viewers and the members and the subscribers, thank you for all of them tuning in, may be more familiar with, unless they get an illness or something and they actually need to get some medicine from a doctor.
But how did alcohol and coffee dodge the bullet?
They aren't drugs. They aren't scheduled drugs.
But they should be. If they're drugs.
That's great. This is the difference between pragmatism and idealism. And so as an activist, you're like, that's wrong. That shouldn't be the thing. And I'm like, but it is. And so how do we get out of there? We are in the process of getting out of the mess that we got into 50 years ago right now. Good news, 20% of the people care. Bad news, 80% of the people don't. And so this is what we have to do. We kind of have to mire through the dreck that is this notice of proposed rulemaking, and the regulators, the powers that be, are asking for us, calling on us, wondering, imploring, just so inquisitive. DOJ is seeking comment on practical consequences of rescheduling marijuana into Schedule 3 under relevant statutory frameworks. They cite the frameworks in here. We are going to get back into diving into this and solve a lot of these things. But we're going to take a quick break from Collateral Base, as they are our 420 sponsor. So we'll be right back.
Yeah, baby.
Did you know that if you are tuning in and are in the industry, your company can sponsor Cannabis Legalization News? That's right. We have 3 roles for you, and we are in the top 1% of podcasts, at least in terms of downloads, that we are aware of. You can be our pre-roll sponsor, our 420 Somewhere sponsor, or our Name That Strain and second half of the show sponsor. More on that coming in future episodes. But back to the most important thing. Oh yeah, let's throw that link out to people. Can you, Will? Can you throw that link out to the commentators or the people that are in the live chat? We have about 345 cool dudes and dudettes joining us, or however they identify. And leave us a 5-star review on Audible, and then also do some SEO tagging for us. Be like Best Cannabis Podcast.
And thanks for liking us, hanging out, and learning with us.
Hey, speaking of learning, back to the Office of Legal Counsel and how their fingerprints are all over this notice of proposed rulemaking that was published Thursday, still has not been published in the Federal Register. So the 60-day public comment period, more on that next week's episode. The interesting aspect is, how do we regulate cannabis, being marijuana, which is 0.3 cannabis that has 0.3% or more THC, naturally occurring or synthetic, it seems, from what we'll talk about at the end here. How do we do that? And how do we make it legal for every state? How do we exert additional regulatory controls on the DEA's part to be able to be compliant with our international treaty obligations, that both the slip opinion and then also the notice of proposed rulemaking they don't really belabor it, but it's obvious what they're talking about, because they get into sections of the Controlled Substances Act like 821, 822, and 823. Shout out for all you 823 mavens out there. That would mean that we would have to register with the DEA, but we still cannot dispense any of these, because this new Schedule 3 drug, naturally occurring Schedule 3 drug, would not have FDA approval, and so it's still illegal to put it in interstate commerce. Now, does that mean that your in-state weed sold at your in-state dispensary, like Miggy and ours dispensary, is going to have to sell weed grown from Illinois? It's all 100% in-state. Is that interstate commerce? That is the question.
If we don't leave the state, though?
100% of the stuff happens in the state. 100% of the transactions happen in the state. The weed is grown in state by people who work in state, sent through a transporter license to our dispensary, sold pursuant to our in-state license with our employees and our license. No money of that transaction except for your equity interest, which is in Washington State. And so there's that one. But then there's also the 1941 case of Wickard v. Filburn. And then there's also the Raich case. And then I think they did 2 of those. And so that's from 2005. Purely in-state cannabis. So like even the cannabis in your home garden is interstate commerce. That has been the law of the land for over 80 years. And it had nothing to do with weed when that became the law of the land. This is the case of Wickard v. Filburn. You know what it was? It's a farmer, and he was growing wheat, and he grew too much wheat, and that impacted the interstate price of wheat.
Oh, wow. Because he like flooded the market. How the fuck do people like are able to attack somebody who's because of their success? Like, how's that even a fucking thing?
what I'm saying is that Wickard v. Filburn means that completely intrastate, within your state boundaries, commerce counts as interstate commerce. And then there was another case, U.S. v. Gonzalez, or Gonzalez v. U.S. the United States. Gonzalez v. Raich, because she was the plaintiff and she sued the United States back during the second Bush administration about 20 years ago. Hilarious that it said the same thing and it cited Wickard v. Filburn, where that was a single plant grown by a single caretaker for a single patient, all within the state of California. How is that interstate commerce? And it was found to be interstate commerce because it is a fungible commodity, according to the now dead Justice Scalia. And as a result, any dent that you make personally could, in theory, be regulated by Congress as interstate commerce.
So, I mean, is that the fear that people have? I mean, when it comes to like everybody, I know people think the MSOs are cheering this, but
if I was a lawyer for the state of Minnesota, I'd be using it to dismiss the case pursuant to their Bill of Rights that says that they're allowed to sell the cannabis that they legally grow. And say, no, you're not, because you're not complying with federal regulations when you make the sales.
But wouldn't that have to be in a federal court, though, to have that federal defense?
No, it has to just be a court of appropriate jurisdiction. And so it's a dual federalism. And so it's this purpose. So like a court that sits in the state of Illinois can make a decision regarding federal law. And a federal court that sits in the state of Illinois or in any state, like they can apply a particular type of law to a particular type of question. And so it's principles of comity, not bananas and slipping and falls and shit, but like reciprocity apply in our legal work.
This is why I think it's funny, like having you as a friend and talking about law in general, right? Because
that's why people tune in.
Tom, what do you do for a living? I'm a lawyer. What's law? Oh, I just sit around and make up hypotheticals all fucking day. Like you know,
I get talk and think.
But it's all hypotheticals. Because couldn't you take the conversation, the argument even further though, when it comes to like a state versus federal case, where like, who's more important? Do you override when you're talking about like jurisdiction and precedence? Wouldn't like a state case, if you're going to argue a federal one, wouldn't that take the case higher up if you're trying to defend that argument that the federal rule?
No. And so like depending on which jurisdiction, I mean, they can try to dismiss it. There's all sorts of motion practice procedural issues that you can raise, which makes litigation take a minute. Litigation it almost takes as long as rulemaking, but it's just a different type of the legislative process to a certain extent, mostly because you have to remember that it's principles of federalism. And so like we have these divided branches of government. This one branch called the judiciary is acting as a check on both of the other two, saying what the law actually is. We are not a civil law jurisdiction. We are a common law jurisdiction. So if this was Europe or back in the day, Louisiana, which is one of the reasons why I can't wave into the bar of Louisiana, I would need to pass the bar because they are more of a civil law society, which is based off of statutes. And ours, precedent over statute.
But how come though, like you said, Louisiana, why is that difference, that disparity allowed? Right? France. Shouldn't one overcome, like overall, shouldn't there be one fundamental, just how we're laying things out?
There is.
United States of America.
Correct. But the states are allowed to govern themselves. So there's like 50 versions, but and so I've gotten familiar on unwittingly and not within my own desire, gotten more familiar with the practice of litigation in Colorado, and so they have their rules for procedure named after federal rules, which may be a common thing in various states. But here in Illinois, our procedural rules are named after our state law statutes. And so if you're citing to a particular provision of motion practice and litigation, it is similar in some states to the federal practice, but completely different in other states, even though the concepts that you're discussing are very similar.
Once again, it's fucking the conspiracy theory always sunny guy. It's fucking, you're pulling references for cases here, but like, and again, you're also doing absolutes when it comes to like why it's so important for this rescheduling to happen, because this is the process, right? And that's the other thing about like the present administration, how people are so angry and being like, oh, FJB or whatever. But the thing is, if you look at what's actually happening in infrastructure and the parliamentary process and laying things out, this is the ball moving forward. This is not game over, but this is how shit gets done, so that one day you can go to your 7-Eleven and pick up pre-rolls along with your pack of cigarettes.
Sure. And this is what happens. We are talking about the will of the people. 88% medical cannabis support in the United States. Over 70%, I think, is the most recent Gallup poll support for federal legalization. No congressional action is meaningfully being taken to give anything for the people's like what they want. And so the administration, in perhaps an attempt to garner votes because he knows it's popular and Congress is inept, says, here's how we make it maybe not legal, but federally legal medically. And so, like, what do you mean by legalization? Do you mean adult use legalization? That's cute. Is that how it started in California in Prop 215? No, it was not.
Right.
And so we are looking at federal medical cannabis legalization. And with that, let's get to the last part of this. Now, one of the things that I'm trying to impress upon everybody, and with our public comment, I'm not going to give them like actual proposed statutory drafts. I may in like subsequent comments, because you shouldn't do the same comment twice, you know. However, like, I think the number of comments might matter. Like, you know, so if somebody wanted some comment, there would be that in strength in numbers. Either way, they only gave this much of what the law would be, and no practical methods in which to ensure that what's going on currently works. And so they're saying, okay, well, this won't be enough for full compliance with our our international treaty obligations, engrafted, Harvard verb there, it means just to like suture on top of, engrafted into our Controlled Substances Act. But with these future requests pursuant to certain areas, then you might be able to have this. And so let's go over what they want to change the definition of marijuana and THC too, because this I think has like implications for the Farm Bill that I don't think a lot of people are even talking about.
Interesting.
And right. And so, like, proposed regulatory text, we aren't there yet, but you know, how we're going to ensure that the procedures make sense, you know, the regulatory procedure that they continuously harped on at the OLC. They want this to be the case. They want there to be all these amendments, and tetrahydrocannabinols will now be defined as this, as opposed to what it had been defined as previously. So this is the new definition of THC. Does that mean THCA? Does that mean delta 8 THC? Does that mean THCO? Does that mean THC10? Okay, this is just tetrahydrocannabinols, meaning tetrahydrocannabinols, and then except as in 2 and 3, and as you can see down here, you have paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. So these are the two exceptions for both hemp and also marijuana. But I believe tetrahydrocannabinols is going to stay in Schedule 1. And so this will still be, you know, quote unquote, illegal Schedule 1, unless it's hemp or unless it's marijuana. And so marijuana, Schedule 3, hemp, unscheduled, THC, Schedule 1, is how I'm reading this. And then, so tetrahydrocannabinols, except in paragraphs, those two that we just went over, naturally contained in a plant of weed, cannabis, as well as synthetic equivalents, and looking at you, Delta, naturally contained, looking at you, THCA, or the resinous extracts of such plant. Okay, like I've never understood THCA vapes ever, or synthetic substances. Okay, Delta 8 vapes, whatever. Derivatives and their isomers and chemicals with similar structures, pharmacological activity to those substances contained in the plant. Every minor cannabinoid out there that's trying to get you high.
That's crazy, though.
Just saying, funny, dude. Like, that's why you tune into Cannabis Legalization News, bitch, because we don't sugarcoat it. We're going to read the law and say, do you know what this means? Do you know what this means?
Well, it's important to people in business, right? Like it's not trappers. We're not talking about fucking people backpacking, you know, pounds of weed from one coast to another. We're talking about people investing in a brick and mortar production, you know, garden. That's what a lot of this is going to happen, right? Like a lot of your end consumers still going to buy the weed from the guy, at the end.
But then how is that legal? How is that federally legal? How is that a transaction that I get a bank loan for that I can be like a liquor store? That's what's forthcoming. And so let's figure out and just finish this up before we look at some weed and play some Name That Strain. And then we're going to, because like when we get done with this, then we can go over to the farm bill, because that's what happened. It was like Thursday this, Friday farm bill, and you're like, what the fuck? And then you see what they're doing, and you're like, what? And so, this one is going to get off the chain after Name That Strain. And that's why, I really, if you're tuning in, it's your first time, I'm gonna just somebody rumble the tip jar and then say, give us a like and subscribe, but also a little of that. And so let's get that out of the way and get this back in there. And so they here are the two exemptions again. THC doesn't include that stuff in hemp, or THC doesn't include that stuff in marijuana. But then they now get into the new definition of marijuana in the Schedule. So they're going to move marijuana to Schedule 3 as defined under that. They're also going to move marijuana extracts. So that's H, and then there's I, and then there's J, naturally derived delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinols. And then under J, so like, here's an interesting one, like marijuana extracts kind of like implies chemistry when I read it. Because it just says cannabinoids. It doesn't say the word naturally.
Well, and again, it uses the same 0.3 definition for hemp. I mean, that's kind of telling.
Right. Well, that's what we're going to talk about after we play some Name That Strain. But then they get into delta-9 back in there. And then they just start saying like naturally derived delta-9 in, this is hemp, 7 USC 1639O. We'll be going over that. And then delta-9 THC in naturally derived in marijuana. And so are they only making natural marijuana and natural hemp legal, whether unscheduled or Schedule 3, and all the other stuff is Schedule 1?
Policy is so frustrating, because you're just like, can I open a fucking store? Just tell me if I can legally open a store.
Oh, can you open a store? Like, can you hear the public comments from the hemp companies right now? And then that's before we talk about the next thing, the farm bill. So let's just take it easy, everybody, and let's look at some stuff that was not grown for being hemp.
There you go. A little THC.
That and industrial grade hemp, I tell you, that stuff is
only the best hemp in the world.
This is a landrace from the same region as Durban Poison, so it is out of Africa. And I'm not sure. I've never. Land races are always fun, so you can get down to the heart of things. But if I grow that in my basement, I'm not gonna be like, oh, that's what it tasted like back in this part of Africa, because my basement is not there. Like, there's so much of the terroir and the water, the land, the light, all of it. The methodology being used to train the cultivar, everything gone. It's just my basement,
I mean, I just ask you if you ever smoked weed in Africa, anyways. But weed can give you flavors and memories, right? Like I smoked the Durban that this is based off of. I used to love that shit. That and Double Dutch, Dutch Treat, whatever. And it's amazing. It's got a interesting name.
It's named a landrace strain that has a similar naming style as Durban Poison, but it's for a different part of Africa.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a part. It's so funny. The Kush is it's named after a location. That always blew my mind that Kush was a location. Like, always just
Kush is a location, dude.
Yeah. Not Maui Wowie, but it has poison in the name.
It sure do. And
what are you smoking on?
What I am having is purported to the people that sold it to me, or at least the people that sold me the beans. It is Pineapple Jack.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pineapple
grown, with Athena Newts in Rockwell, and so that was fun. I was messing with some Rockwell and some Athena Newts. Oh, got it.
Or no, wait,
no, that's so close. That is
close.
Correct. He has the correct naming convention and the wrong jurisdiction. And
it was the M that threw me off for it. Here, another hint.
Right.
It's the M.
again, he had the right naming convention, and the second word is poison. And so now all you have to do is fill in the place from Africa and then put the word poison under it. That makes it substantially easier to get this.
I am smoking some Cool Whip.
Some Cool Whip.
Cool Whip.
Cool Whip.
You see the Family Guy episode? We got a
I think that's where they
that's
named
not
it
it
from, right?
No, that's the same one. I did the same thing. I thought with the M it was it, but it wasn't. It's not allowed. Let's just give it to him. Let's give it to him.
Okie dokie. Let's tell him about Mozambique Poison.
Beautiful.
That is available from Holy Smoke Seeds. Mozambique Poison is a landrace from the same region as Durban Poison. It actually can blue when it is grown under the right climate, and euphoric is its description. Flavors of, got any flavors on that?
No, I didn't catch it.
Weed. Flavors of weed. Oh, wait. Pine, sweet, and earthy. Cool. Okay.
Go for it.
What happened on Friday? You saw what happened on Thursday. We discussed it. Now we got to talk about what happened on Friday. And so then on Friday, the Congress,
right?
They decided to release the Congress's draft, not the Senate's draft. I'm talking about the House. I guess they're both in Congress, but when I say Congress, I typically mean the House. My bad. So the House's draft of the Farm Bill, not necessarily what's going to happen, not necessarily where the finish line will be, but after we've discussed the administration's position regarding medical marijuana being marijuana that has the THC and hemp not having the THC, what did they do on the Hill? Okay, let's go over it. The appropriate area of this is the hemp production provision, section 10,006 of the 2024 Farm Bill. This gets difficult and it will hurt your brain because a lot of amendments will be forthcoming. Most of the amendments will be into this section of the Agricultural Grain Marketing Act that defines hemp. That is 7 USC 1639-0. And I got R up here, but we are going to start not with R, not with O, not with P. Oh, wait, yeah, we are going to start with O, because O is the definition of hemp. And so the definition of hemp is it's the definition of hemp. You know what it reminds me of? This is a funny one. Let's do some shtick. The definition of hemp reminds me of gremlins that you get wet.
You're not supposed to wet them after midnight?
No, you remember when Gremlins, where they threw them in the pool and they just started like reproducing and they just boil. The definition of hemp is like gremlins that you have gotten wet. And by that, I mean, let's go back to the definition of hemp. And so what we're talking about is also, and so I've highlighted this as well. Let me just blow it up a little bit more and rephrase it. And so they say, look, you are going to now insert this after one. And so it's still the same definition, hemp, and then it'll be like one, and like the term hemp means this. And now we have like sub definitions. One, it will be hemp grown for cannabinoid extraction. And so the term hemp grown for cannabinoid extraction means any hemp grown for the purposes of extraction intended for human or animal, take that, dog, CBD, inhalation or topical use. So that is hemp sub A. And then you have hemp sub B. The term industrial hemp means hemp grown for the stalk, non-cannabinoid. So they make sure they put non-cannabinoid in there. And then they kind of, they're specific, not vague, besides non-cannabinoid. Oil, cake, nut, whole, other non-cannabinoids. So they do make sure they say non-cannabinoid again. And then also see that as immature hemp and that's interesting. And then C of industrial hemp can mean immature hemp intended for human consumption. So this would be your hemp microgreens, or maybe your hemp clones. Maybe clones won't get shut down. Maybe seeds won't get shut down. I don't know.
So this is just amendments to the hemp farm bill, right? Like it's not being pushed by any particular congressperson, right? It's being worked on by several at the same time. right? Like
this could be the next law. And so this was introduced by the Agricultural Committee in the House as the Farm Bill. This is the 2024 congressional, and by House of Representatives, I mean congressional draft of the Farm Bill. The Senate draft has not yet been revealed. It may substantially match what we're going to be talking about here, which is now taken hemp and bifurcated it into two things: hemp grown for cannabinoid extraction, and then, well, do they call it cannabinoid extraction again? Yes, hemp grown for cannabinoid extraction, or hemp grown for industrial purposes, industrial hemp.
Mm-hmm. But
industrial like hemp's back, everybody.
Well, did it go anywhere though? But you know, things like this though are like, once the Senate releases it, is there going to be momentum once to have this thing come to completion? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Who's pushing? Can people like reach out? This is the kind of shit you reach out to your congressman about and be like, hey, can you hurry up and get this thing done? Like push the new, you know what I mean?
Yes. And this is more lobbying. There is no public comment period here.
Exactly.
Congress gonna act. And so fuck y'all. And that's the, I mean, but not like politely, like whatever that is in Southern, I'm going to pray for you or something like that. But, and so Congress gets to act. Like the rulemaking is like, that's notice of proposed rulemaking. Everybody gets to put on input. Congress gets to make the effing law. And so Congress is going to do its job. You cannot quid pro quo them. You know, you don't really get like a public comment period for it. And so this is kind of the interesting aspect of it, but it does have to marry and match what the Senate puts forward. So we'll have to kind of see what, if anything, the differences are going to be. And I don't think they're going to be that much, because this is what the Republicans want. And so we'll see what the Democrats want when it comes to hemp. But if you introduce a new version of it and you say all the other version is, because like, right now, all hemp, like 95+% is grown for cannabinoid extraction.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Well, but I mean, that's where the money's at, though, right now for a lot of these people. You know, that's where the investments are at, right? Like, hey, I got the new fucking CBD. That and shrooms.
It's the down product selling. And so it's like, I can sell THCA nationwide. I can sell Delta 8 nationwide. I can sell, THCA nationwide. It's basically those two things.
Well, and I think it comes down to the consumer too, right? Like a lot of times people don't care. People are not caring how the meat's made or whatever. But I really want to, you know, when we open the store in Illinois, I want to know the market out there. I want to know the actual because we're still at that young part where hemp, you know, people don't know where their fucking hemp's sourced from, their CBD. I bought some little doggy joints for my pit bull. She's getting older, and they're hemp infused. I don't know where the fucking hemp came from. I mean, it could come from China for all I know. And you know, I hope that someone local got it, but I don't know. It's a mass market into a mass produced pet store. You know, there's a lot of American farmers missing out on this, commodity.
It's glossing that, like, okay. So what the law is regulating, or like what the law is demonstrating, is that there is clearly a difference between industrial purposes hemp and cannabinoid hemp. And so they are going to start regulating this on that spectrum. And so if you're going to be growing hemp for cannabinoid purposes, they may have new tests. And they talk, that's what the other aspects of this is. It's a lot of, and so like this one, when you try to read like how P is going to be amended, it breaks your brain, because they start saying like by inserting this clause after that. And then they talk about how they're going to insert. Now you have to like a procedure to designate the type of hemp. And so like so it's going to either be hemp for cannabinoids or not, or both.
I mean, they're really okay.
Well, then they're gonna say if it's hemp for industrial, we can look at it, and then felons are allowed to, or if they've had a felony in the past 10 years, they can also do industrial hemp, but not regular hemp. And then here's how we're going to inspect it, and so there's going to be inspecting and then testing. If a producer fails to provide documentation required, the state will conduct the test described in paragraph 2A3. And so you have to see how they're actually going to test it. And you have to review and refer back to this. And it becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to match it all up.
I mean, regulating cannabis hemp is like the tax code, where we're really trying to overline the shit, right? They're trying to find every aspect that this plant is used for and say, okay, we're gonna, limit this, regulate this, and I mean, do we do that to corn? Corn. This corn, because corn can be used for different
We do it
oils.
to what we make corn out of. And so they're
Exactly.
starting to, but that's what this is. They're regulating the downstream products. And so you see them saying, like, this stuff, industrial hemp, this stuff, we're going to, and then again, it is a new thing that we need to discuss this aspect of, as they've changed the testing procedure. And so like right now we're only into like Q. And so Q aspect of it, that is, we're in 1639, so you have to go to Q. This is the plan. And like the plan has to do with the testing aspect of it, a procedure to test using post-decarboxylated. And so they're inserting in there the new testing for how they are going to determine if it's industrial, like, industrial hemp or cannabinoid inspection hemp and all that type of stuff. So then how are they actually going to create this procedure for the testing? That's going to be something new. And then if there's going to be a test for the hemp that's industrial, and there's going to be a test for the hemp that's not. And then not only that, it's now they change it, administration, regulations, and guidelines. And so it's no longer promulgation. And so now we get into 1639R. And 1639R, they talk about how there's not the DEA, this is new ones, laboratory accreditation. So now in the law, they're building in this laboratory accreditations. So that thing that's been continued ain't going to get continued no more. It's not in the rule. Now it's going to be in the statute that certifies the purposes of the hemp testing in accordance with this subtitle. And then at the end of it, they strike the production of hemp and insert regulating of hemp-derived cannabinoid products. This is a term of art that never appears anywhere, only appears once in this. And so is that is that the third definition of hemp now? Hemp-derived cannabinoid products? And so they are changing the way they are going to test it, and they are going to change the way they have new rules to regulate this new subset. So it's the spectrum of the Controlled Substances Act, from unregulated into up to Schedule 1 down to Schedule 3, depending on how they create their products.
Well, the testing is definitely, like, the one thing I've always been saying when we're doing this is lab regulation is plant regulation, right? If we just monitor labs, but the next thing about it is, like, what are they monitoring? What are they testing for? Because, like, here in Washington State, for me, I always thought it's kind of fucked up how we did it here for human consumption, right? That's what this plant is. It's a human consumption product versus the t-shirt versus petroleum oils like we've done. But in Washington State, we define the medical version / recreational. The dividing line is the extra test that we do for the medical component of our program, where it's a fucking human consumption plant. Like, it all should be medically tested, like how they test for patients, right? Like, there should be one definition for, like, what is the testing parts of the plant, for the metals, for the because there's so many things I never even thought about. The pesticides,
but it's the cannabinoids. It's not, they don't give two fucks about that noise. They have that stuff sorted, like, when you go buy blueberries and shit. But now it's coming about the cannabinoids. So they are on to you guys. They get it. They realize they effed up. They effed up so hard. They now created 3 sub-definitions, only disclosed 2 of them. And then you also have to read the Controlled Substances Act's proposed rulemaking changes for the definition of marijuana to interweave both of them. And it's looking good for Schedule 3 cannabis license holders, unless Donald Trump gets elected. But then, like, what does he want to do? He doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, then that's why I keep talking about the process, right? Like as much as people want to complain about the Biden administration, there's more infrastructure stuff being done right now. There's more stuff being done for average citizens, for people who make less than 100K. My wife just got her school debt wiped because she's been making efforts, right? All these things are happening for, like, mediocre everybody, right? And
they're called people. They're Americans.
Well, I mean, like, you know, like we're just people of not wealth, though, right? Like I'm about to be in a position of not worrying about things as much as I do, but I'll still be worrying, right? Like you talk about the work thing.
If I don't, I won't be doing my job as your business partner unless I give you a couple of sleepless nights when you realize how much is on the line.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's going to be a work thing where my work and focus is going to change from being a technician to having a natural business of ours and focusing on not just the. That's funny. I was telling my cousin who's here right now. I was like, you know, right now my big concern is some town in Illinois right now called Peoria. Like I'm invested in these people because people who are going to work for us, their success is going to be our success, right? Like there is that truth that you're saying about absolutes, like talking about like why this is a process. Why are we even talking about this Controlled Substance Act when alcohol and caffeine are drugs? Technically, like we want to get all fucking science.
We just don't have the that's why I'm like what we are going to use the public comment period for and suggest that the federal government does to legalize medical cannabis nationwide through the use of these administrative rules to take care of it and clean it all up. That is really, really important and powerful to the next step of completely legalizing it and dropping it. Yeah. Because if you don't have that, like, with alcohol, it was a pause, right? They had a regulatory framework. Yeah. They took a break. They went back to it. We didn't have the regulatory framework. And we know now that it's unlike all other Schedule III substances. So you kind of have to give it its own lane, you know?
And it's the unfortunate part that we're just working with what we have, you know, because, you know, our buddy Will, we had a conversation on Veterans Day talking about, or 420, about how VA gives ketamine treatments, and that's a Schedule III drug. So cannabis can be an option now for veterans too. It's going to be, we all know it's medicine, but it's also.
But then how do we get our shelf space licensed at the federal government to say that what we are giving that person who comes in the door is Schedule III medical cannabis?
Well, doesn't it come down to like the
No,
reason
we get to make it up. That's the thing. Like we have to read the law, public comment, tell them what to do. Yeah, we get to make it up. I mean, like this is not like this is.
No, you're right. This is the time right now.
It's the most soft, wet, like unformed type of law you can do because you're actually making it up while you do it. And then it kind of gels over time, but they get it wrong and they amend it all the time.
Well, and then we're further than we were. People won't be like, oh, the last guy, did the hemp bill, blah, blah, blah. That was not like leadership. That was just pandering to like, let me just get what's popular, even though like this is a popular vote thingy, but the present dude has been working towards a lot of people. And I think if you make under 100K, this is, everything's been better right here. This is how it happens. This is how the opportunity for future shit happens. And switching it up can change the gears, and they could stop the ball and send us back to 1928.
We'll do a public comment, and then we'll also see what the Senate's going to do. But we just have to see the gaps between what the Senate's going to do and what the House is going to do. And then that's it for the next 5 years. So like, again, they pull the rug out from you all the time in this industry. And it appears that right now the rug's getting pulled out of hemp and put under license holders. That's what it looks like from me.
Oh, sure. But then again, this is all part of the process. And eventually, I think there will be that law where there'll be regulation post-harvest, right? There's not going to be this like you have to grow.
That's what it is. That's what they're doing. It's going to be regulation post-harvest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where the hemp bill and every the other thing that's happening right now with descheduling, you make a baby, and then you got rescheduled bill of baby arm hemp act. You know what I mean? Like it's the same fucking plant.
But like we're at the point where we get to sit here and like say, do it this way.
Yeah.
Like so, like we get to push them around, and like again, nobody cares that much about this plant except for us. And the more that you can tell them what to do and have like a reason for it and how it's going to be like controlled and where the people are, it's medical cannabis, highly regulated medical cannabis nationwide. It's not Delta 8 by mail.
But also, it's not just us though. But there's like the Kevin Sabats of the world. There are people going to put
Correct.
the other side of the voice in there. So that's why you got to say something.
The nationwide medical cannabis, highly regulated, still has to deal with Kevin Spot.
Yeah,
because he wants heads and beds. He wants his nut paid. Everybody wants their nut paid, which is just kind of how we do things here in America. There's an old saying: "The business of America is business." Good night, everybody.
Thanks for hanging, though. Yeah, that was a good hour. Good hanging out.
It was a good hour. Yeah, this was the big one because we were able to dive in, and we could have talked more. And then tune in for more episodes. It's going to continue to develop. We're going to tell you how to make the public comments to it. We'll have people on the show that'll help with analysis and other guests. We had a guest that was going to come on today. Huge news, but cannabis is like ordinary time mass in Catholics. It's most of the year. Like, it's boring most of the year. This was like biggest news in 5 years,
But I think the reactionary to is not how we thought there are a lot of people who are upset that are activists and stuff, right? We've gone through the Schaefer Commission, the LaGuardia report, all these other things that we're trying to prove the evils of society linked to this plant. And we're moving the ball forward, and as sleepy as this motherfucker is, he's actually making things happen. And so I would say, yay.
Yep. Dank Brandon.
Dank Brandon.
Yep.
But
okay.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Tune in next week when we'll show how to make a public comment. You can't do it yet. You gotta wait till Tuesday.
One more week.